Dr. Jazz.
Thanks.
Dr.
You're on like one of
Jazz.
some of my favorite albums in the past 3 years, definitely. So,
Oh
and
wow, okay.
I'd like to ask you first about your connection with James Brandon Lewis. And
Hmm.
I know you guys started as a duo, I think, and then it became this amazing quartet, which Code of Being, I think, it was their last one. And when did you guys start playing together? How did that happen?
That's sort of a funny story, man. I was playing with Cooper Moore. We did a gig in Harlem, in East Harlem, and then afterwards there was an after party at Cooper Moore's house. Just a small get together with the musicians, and some of the guests were invited who were at the gig. And so I'm hanging out in Cooper Moore's kitchen, and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me, and he's just sort of hanging out. He acts like we're friends. I've never met this guy before, and I'm talking with an alto player, Darius Jones. I don't know. Do you know
Oh, sure.
Darius?
Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
I'm talking to Darius, and this guy is just like right by me, acting as if we're friends. It was a little strange. And then he would interject some stuff into the conversation I was having with Darius. And I was like, who does this guy think he is? I don't even know this guy. So he eventually introduced himself. He's like, I'm James. I was like, okay, I'm Chad, thanks for coming to the gig, blah, blah. But I just sort of wrote him off because I was like, this guy is sort of anyone who would just like come over and like hang out like that, but not, it was weird. That's that's what I would have said, right? And so then a couple weeks later, I think he came to a gig of mine that I was playing with Cooper Moore, another one, and we started talking, and I was like, man, I'm really enjoying what he's talking about, and I'm realizing this. He has a lot of his own individual concept of playing music. So we started working together as a duo, and it was a situation where we didn't have to talk about it. We didn't have to say, okay, let's do this. Right off the bat, boom, we had that connection, and that's how it all started, really. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it's like duo drums and saxophone. I always think of Coltrane and Rashid Ali and a bunch of other amazing duos. But like,
Right.
how did
There's so many great duos.
Oh man, horns and drums. It's like, whew, it's a nice combo. How did you guys add Arwan and Brad into the equation, or he did? I mean,
well, with the quartet, let me think about that. He was looking to do a new group. Now I worked with Brad and Arwan before in Arwan's trio.
Yeah.
Right. But I know he had a couple of different groups at the time, and he was looking to do something new. And he mentioned the idea to me. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I love Brad's playing, I love Arwan, and I remember our first gig was at this place in Brooklyn, and Junie Booth was there. Junie Booth came to the gig. I remember.
Oh,
that.
really? Oh.
Yeah. Before he passed away. And again, it was like we didn't have to talk about a lot of the music. We just hit, and it was happening from the very first time we played.
Yeah, it's such a chemistry you guys have. I mean, although I think when I listen to you in whatever context, you seem to gel into the music so amazingly. Whether it's free or composed,
I appreciate that.
Some heavy written out stuff, it's just like, okay, I listened actually to Iron Wine today. I was cycling.
Ah,
And, you know, I
right,
was like, man, he's on that as well. You know, like I want to ask you later about that. I didn't know that, but then I checked. I was like, really? But the other one, like I mentioned, my favorite albums in the last couple of years is like also Fly or Die. You know, Jaimie Branch's band, and
right.
which kind of starts almost at the same time as your work with James, and but it's a completely different style almost. I mean, in a
Yeah,
way.
very different. Very,
Yeah.
very different band. Yeah.
Like, how do you adjust to all these situations as a sideman? And how did the gig with Jaimie actually begin? I mean,
Well, the gig with Jaimie, so Jaimie spent a lot of time in Chicago.
yeah.
I guess we were there. We overlapped a little bit, but I didn't really remember her from Chicago. But she called me sort of out of the blue and wanted to see if I would be available to do a concert. I was like, sure, let's do it. And that band eventually turned into Fly or Die.
Mm.
But I knew
Pleasure.
she was a fan of Rob Mazurek. She was a fan of Chicago Underground, and so I was definitely down to work with her. And then working with her, I was like, wow, this is what's been missing in New York for a while. Because Roy Campbell, I used to work with him quite a bit.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, man.
Yeah, with the band with Mark Rebo. That's the band that probably did the most touring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I would do other gigs with Roy. I loved Roy's playing.
Yeah.
And he had such a personalized approach that was very raw. He wasn't necessarily a technician, I mean, he had a lot of technique, but he
I know what you mean. Yeah.
he had this sound about him, that was so in your face sort of thing. And when he passed away, it was really sort of a void, I thought, in New York. You had all these great players, all these great technical, but just having that raw sound, I was like, wow, when is this going to come back? And then when I met Jaimie, I was like, okay, there it is.
Yeah.
We're back, And so I really enjoy working in that band.
It's like a working band, actually, right? I mean, you guys been doing this now for 5 years.
Yeah,
which is really rare.
I
mean,
we're
nowadays.
working a lot. We're actually taking a year off.
Oh, okay.
Until the next record comes out. We just finished that record a couple months ago.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
And I mean, it's a band that works a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw like the schedules you guys have, and it's like, man, it's a lot of playing, which is fantastic. I mean, especially
it's great. Yeah.
It's quite
difficult now.
Commercial music, yeah, but you guys still manage to play a lot. But yeah, now it's really bad. I mean, for gigs, it's bizarre.
Very difficult.
Yeah. But otherwise,
going back to your other question, though, you're asking
that's what
about playing all these different styles of music and how do I balance and all that. That's how I grew up playing music, So for me, it's very natural to just do a whole bunch of different stuff. Originally I was a guitar player.
Yeah, I've read that.
And
it's amazing.
Really into classical music. That was sort of my first musical experiences. And then when I was 14, just started high school, I met a great bass player named Matthew Lux. And he was just really into music. One of these guys who knows everything, he's just like, knows every record. 14 years old. It's like, how can you know all this stuff so young? But he asked me what I was listening to. And at that time, I was really just listening to classical music. I had a few other things, other records, like a Kenny G record maybe, or like a New Edition record or something like that. I was like, I got Kenny G. And Matt was like, no. Forget all that. We gotta get you on the right path. And he's like, okay, you got to listen to Art Blakey, Miles Davis, Art Ensemble of Chicago, he just laid all this stuff at me. I was like, what? Who? I don't, it was overwhelming.
But you were playing drums already at that time, or?
I was playing percussion, I would say.
Okay.
I was playing in a high school concert band and orchestra. But I wasn't really playing, I didn't really have any experience playing drum set. So he started going to a program after school called the Bloom School. And I would do classes with David Bloom, with Matt, and just sort of beginning improvisational classes and really dealing more with concepts more than real specific stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
And so what happened is that shortly thereafter, we're talking 1986, maybe 86, 87, I started going to a club called the Underground Wonder Bar, which was three or four blocks from my house, and I would hear Bobby Broom.
Oh, really?
And this is at like 14 years old, 15 years old, right? And I already had a little mustache, so I never got carded or anything. They would just they would let me in there, right? So when I heard that, I was like, okay, this is it. This is what's happening. And I went every week and would hear Bobby Broom with George Flutis and Dennis Carroll.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that band at that time, that was it, man, for me. And I learned so much, just not just about the music, but like the process of like, okay, they're bringing these tunes in. This is what it sounded like last week. Now it sounds like this week. What did they do? And it was just mind blowing. So that had a big impact on me, obviously. Now, few years later after that, I started getting into music from the AACM, and the band that really, there's a couple bands, but really the first band I heard with the AACM was Ernest Dawkins' New Horizons. I don't know if you know that band.
Yeah.
With the drummer Avreeayl, who was a really big influence on me early on too.
Wow, interesting.
And Avreeayl, I'll never forget these gigs, like where he would be playing and he would hit the cymbal with so much intensity, you would think the cymbal was just gonna like disintegrate. But it wasn't a volume thing. It wasn't about how like, loud or hard. It was just the intensity where he would hit that cymbal, like boom, wow. Yeah. So, yeah, George Flutis, Avreeayl, two completely different drummers, night and day. But those are probably my two biggest influences growing up in Chicago.
Wow. Wow, amazing. And did you then like learning to play jazz, let's say, or improvised music on drums? How did that procedure go with you? I mean, the process.
It's all happened at the same time, man.
Self-taught or like?
What's that?
Were you self-taught with this? Like, did you transcribe or?
Well, what's interesting is that I never really hooked up with a drum teacher before. When I eventually went to the New School of Jazz.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There, I probably the person I studied the longest with was Joe Chambers.
Oh man, really? Oh, I love Joe Chambers, man.
Oh yeah, I did a couple years with Joe, really? But I wasn't ready, man. When I was studying with him, I didn't. He was laying all this great stuff on me. I wasn't practicing it. It was just going way over my head. Now I get it, but back then when I was 18, 19 years old, that stuff just went over my head. And so I almost think of myself as being self-taught as far as just playing the instrument,
Yeah.
Although I have studied with different people in the past. I just never really hooked up with a teacher like I know a lot of my friends have. But what I did do early on is hook up with just great jazz musicians. and I had a lot of mentors. Dennis Carroll, who played bass with Bobby Broom, he was probably my first mentor. And he would just lay all these records on me. I'd go over to his house. He'd say, check this out, now check this out. And so that was amazing, you know. And then I started playing gigs early on, like 15, 16 years old in Chicago. And I had no idea what I was doing, man. I didn't have, you know, I heard the records, but I did not know how to swing. I didn't know how to play the drums. And I learned how to play on the bandstand.
Wow,
you know, there are people like Lynn Holiday. I don't know if you know that name. Great tenor player who was based in Chicago for a while. Rob Mazurek.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I learned a lot, you know, back in the 80s, you know, he was playing bebop, more mainstream music, and I would be doing gigs with him. I did a lot of gigs with organ players because that was a big thing in Chicago. A lot of trio organ sessions, and every time, man, I would just get my ass kicked. You know, people would say, "What are you doing? You know, that's not how you do that." You know,
that's the best. Yeah.
But that's how I learned. You know, that's how I learned how to play. So by the time I got to New York, you know, I already had 3-4 years playing gigs in Chicago. Yeah.
Did you, I mean, when you went to New York, like this early 90s, did you then like do gigs with your generation kind of musicians or not really? Because I mean, the first album I have you with is Fred Anderson's stuff, which I love, you know, I loved him. I mean, still do his playing. But this early 90s, did you already like play New York gigs or do some albums or touring with some people or not yet?
Not really. So I moved. Well, the first college I went to, I was a guitar major. I was a classical guitar major at Millikan University. So I did that for a year. Then I transferred to the new school to play drums. And there were some playing experiences. First off, Smalls, that's when Smalls, I mean, I knew Spike from back then. And we did a few gigs before Mitch started Smalls. But when that first started, there was a collaboration with the new school. So a lot of people from the new school were doing gigs at Smalls in the beginning. So I would play there. I did a few gigs with Lou Donaldson, with Junior Mance, Herman Foster. I did gigs with, I used to do a trio with Kurt Rosenwinkel.
Really?
And I forget who the bass player was. Maybe Drew. No, it wasn't Drew Grass. It was, I can't remember. I used to work in a trio with J.D. Allen and Neil Kane.
Interesting.
So yeah, I would do things here and there, you know.
Yeah.
But what really changed for me was when I moved from Chicago to New York, which was in 97. Because at that time, I was doing these gigs, but I was also just doing a lot of restaurant type of stuff, just playing standards and stuff like that. And I was working all the time. And I had a full-time job working at a wine shop, liquor shop, Union Square.
Wow.
Yeah. So working, 5-6 days a week, playing and having a day job, I still couldn't pay my rent.
Yeah, man, that's, yeah.
So I was like, this isn't working, man. New York is not working for me at all. It's time to get out of here, So I called up my friend, bass player, Josh Abrams.
Oh, sure.
He came, drove to New York, picked me up. I fit everything I could into a station wagon, left all my records. I had almost like 2,000 records.
Oh, man, come on.
I left everything, man. I just took like some clothes, my cymbals, that was it. And started over in Chicago. And that was really the best decision. That, in a way, that's what I sort of feel that's when things started, was in '97. Because when I got to Chicago, I started working with Fred Anderson. Fred asked me to join his trio.
Yeah.
I started recording a lot with Rob Mazurek doing the Chicago Underground stuff. I started doing a lot of more pop, maybe not pop, indie rock
studio
type
workish kind of, yeah.
Yeah, working with like Sam Prekop. I met Masna Roberts, right, with Josh Abrams, and we started the band Sticks and Stones.
Oh, yeah.
I met Nicole Mitchell and David Boykins and started working with them in the Expanse. So all this stuff happened
Suddenly, yeah.
in 1 year in 1997. And that sort of, took me to where I'm at now, really.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, because also the albums that I have with you, that's kind of when it all starts, like late 90s, the Chicago Underground stuff and Fred Anderson stuff. But I wanted to ask you about Fred. He's one of those really under the radar guys, I think, but so good, man. If you listen to that Back at the Velvet Lounge, I love that album. How was it like playing with him?
It was unbelievable, man. I feel a lot of people. I think a lot of people recognize he's this master musician, but I feel like a lot of people don't understand how and why. So the thing about Fred is, when he would play a gig, he would just take out his horn and start blowing, sort of like as an introduction, right? And when he's playing, it's not like he's playing quarter notes, 16th notes, 32nd notes. All of that stuff disappears. He's just playing, and any tempo that you decide to play, any groove that you decide to play, is going to work. It's like magic. It's like really a whole next level type of thing, right? And you think about someone like Hamid Drake. I mean, that's how people wonder, like, how did Hamid get all this stuff together? It's playing with Fred.
Fred, yeah, sure.
Because his time is so advanced. Like everything, any concept of rhythm time, it's all in the pulse that he's playing, And I think he really got that from Charlie Parker, who was his biggest influence.
Yeah. Did you ever ask him about that?
Yeah. I mean, he's
about the rhythm. I mean, this approach.
Whenever I asked him any question, I felt like he would always just start talking about Charlie Parker. It doesn't matter what I asked. Like Charlie Parker. When I heard Charlie Parker, it's like that really had a huge impact. Charlie Parker really had a huge impact on him, and he doesn't sound anything like Charlie Parker. As far as what he's doing melodically, but
conceptually,
if you think about his pulse and his rhythm, it's Charlie Parker. It really is.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, he's really one of those guys that people should know more about. It's like David S. Ware also, or guys like that, who are really incredible, but like somehow
under the radar.
Yeah, somehow they got neglected. But yeah, I love it. Anyway.
The other thing I really learned with Fred is the idea of a movable one. So like if you're playing, it doesn't matter what the rhythm or groove is. The one doesn't have to stay the same. It could be anywhere. And as long as your time is really together, because Fred could do a thing, right, where you'd be playing, and he would change where the one is, right, and everybody would be wrong. Like everyone,
That's so cool, man. I love
it. Like where he put the one is where the one is. No matter no matter what. Doesn't matter if you're hearing it someplace else,
Yeah.
because his time was at together. You know,
Yeah.
it was incredible.
Wow, man. Yeah. I wish I saw you guys live, but I didn't have a chance. I mean,
Mm.
and at the same time, you started working with Rob Mazurek, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and was this like, how did this collaborate? I mean, you said you started playing with Rob in the 80s, like already a little, but like, how did this band happen? And I mean, it became probably one of the most influential and important improvised, whatever we want to call it, ensembles, I guess, in the early 2000s. Or
what happened is, so like I was saying, I played some gigs with Rob early on in the 80s. But that we were just playing standards back then mostly. Rob had a contract with Hip Records, which I think was a Scottish label. And he was growing, I think he was growing more and more frustrated with his band and the sort of music he was doing. And one of the things that was going on is that he had a band with all these incredible bebop musicians: John Weber on bass, George flutist, Eric Alexander. And as far as playing that music, they were kicking his ass. They were totally kicking his ass. And so he was sort of, in a way, the weak link in his own band. Around that same time, he met Jeff Parker.
Yeah.
And Jeff, I think, was really key in opening Rob up into these other ways of playing and other approaches to music. So what happened is, there's a club in Chicago called the Green Mill, and they agreed to allow us to go in on Sundays and just workshop, right? So we did that, where we would just bring in compositions we were writing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, different ideas, and that eventually developed into Chicago Underground. Now, as far as Chicago Underground Duo, that's a really funny story, man. We were rehearsing, and the bass player just didn't show up.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
So we're like, oh, we're not going to call this. Just keep working on this stuff. And I was like, wow, this actually sounds great without a bass player. So that's how that came to be.
Yeah, no, I love that. You know, it's you guys have done so much, music. It's incredible and always fresh and always interesting. Every album, even though you did so many actually within a short period, it's quite an important, I think, milestone or something like that. How should I put it? Within the avant-garde music, definitely. I mean, what was happening at that time. So, but I wanted to ask you about your choice to move back to New York. Then you said everything was happening, so many things in Chicago, and you were playing, and I guess also touring Europe. How come you decided to go to New York then back? I mean, or
a woman,
Okay, one of those. Okay.
Yeah, no, my first wife. Yeah, I moved. I'm trying to think what year that was. That would have been 2001. And the irony is, I moved to downtown, like 2 blocks from the World Trade Center.
Okay.
Right, like right before it happened.
Oh shit.
Like maybe not right before, maybe a year before. So then, 9/11, and we moved to Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which at that time, not a lot of people were living there. I mean,
it was not so hip yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't hip at all. But so that's where that, and so when I moved back, there's a bass player named Tom Abbs, who he runs the label now called Northern Spy. I don't know if you know that label.
Yeah, I know Tom. I mean, yeah.
Oh, you know Tom? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, Tom really hooked me up. I was familiar with a lot of the and free jazz stuff happening in Chicago, but I really didn't know that much about the stuff happening in New York. So Tom really hooked me up with like Cooper Moore, Daniel Carter, Sabir Mateen, Roy Campbell, you know, a lot of that. So I started doing a lot of work with them.
Yeah. How did then the you mentioned Mark Ribot, and you know we talked about Roy Campbell also, and how did that spiritual unity thing begin? Like with Mark through Roy, or like how did you hook up with him? Or?
No, that's interesting. So what happened was there was an organization or venue, Symphony Space, and they wanted to put together concerts that were collaborations between New York and Chicago musicians.
Ah, okay.
So they called me up and said, would I be interested in putting something together? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I want to do something with Fred from Chicago, and let's say Blood Omer would be amazing. And they were like, no, I mean, that sounds like a good idea, but we're thinking about something maybe more adventurous or something like that. And I was like, what? More adventurous than Blood? What are you talking about? So then I mentioned, I went through a whole bunch of musicians, man. I think I might have went through like 4 or 5 different people, and they turned everything down. So I was very frustrated. So I called up Jeff Parker. And I said, man, these folks, they're not into any of my ideas. Blah, blah. He's like, you should say Mark Ribot and see. Now I knew Mark Ribot a little bit. I knew a little bit of his music, but not the full breadth of all the stuff that he's done. And so I thought, okay, I'll try. I don't think they're going to go for it, but we'll see. I said, Mark Ribot, brilliant. You know, they were so into this idea. It's like, let's do it. And that concert was really challenging for me because I felt like I was caught in the middle. We were playing, and all of a sudden, Fred would look over at me and he'd say, okay, play time. I'm like, all right, cool. And then I look over at Mark Ribot, and Ribot was like, mix it up. No, mix it up. So I'm like, do I play time? Do I play free? Do I play? So that was, the whole concert was like that.
Oh, wow.
But when we were done, Ribot he was really into it. I thought it was sort of a disaster myself, but Ribot loved it. And eventually, I think the original band was going to be me, Ribot, William Parker, and Fred.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
Yeah, that was the original.
That would have been cool.
That was supposed to be the original band, but then I think Fred wasn't able to tour during a certain period or something. And so next thing you know, it turned into Roy. And then that's right when Henry came from California to New York. So Henry was the bass player, and then that was it. Yeah, that was the band.
So basically you were the trigger for that band. I mean, the kind of the...
Sort of, I guess. Yeah, I didn't think about it.
Interesting.
But yeah,
I didn't know that.
So.
Oh, wow. That's so cool, man. But at the same time, I wanted to ask you about titration also. I mean, the active ingredients, which kind of happened at the same time, right? And
what's it? Active ingredients? Wow, that takes me way back, man. I guess it was around the same time.
I mean,
no one asked me about that record.
I wanted to ask you, how did you decide to? It's Steve Swell on it. I love Steve, and how did you decide?
Jemeel, Moondoc.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, well, I think I met Jemeel through Tom back when I came back, and I just love Jameel's playing.
Yeah, man.
The first time I got the idea for that band is the first time I heard Jemeel, he was playing with Steve Swell, Jackson Krall, and Wilbur Morris.
Oh yeah.
At the Breck Forum, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this is such a great sounding band. So I'm gonna steal it.
You stole half of it.
I got a recording session. I got a recording session with Delmar, And what was so funny about that, it was the first project I did as a leader.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had no idea about how do you get a record deal? Like, what is that even about? So I talked to Rob. He's like, "Oh, just call up Bob at Delmark. I'm sure he'll agree to the record." It's like, "All right, fine." Call up Bob. We're talking about all sorts of stuff. We're talking about blues records. We're talking about fast food in Chicago, like the best burger spots, best hot dog spots. We're talking about the Cubs, talking about the Bears. But we had like a 2-hour conversation, and I was just like, this is not going to happen. I'm getting ready to hang up the phone. I'm like, all right, well, Bob, yeah, good talking to you. And he's like, well, why'd you call me in the first place, Chad? I was like, you think it's possible for me to do a record date sometime, maybe next couple of months? Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, I'll see you. Bye. It was hilarious.
But did you already lead bands before? Like as a band?
No,
leader? Not really. Okay.
No, I mean not. That was definitely my first record as a leader. Was Active Ingredients. Yeah.
Did you feel comfortable in that role?
Yeah, never really led
as a band leader.
Not really. It was hard.
Yeah. Okay.
It was hard, but it was a learning experience. Another thing that happened during that date is there's a song on there called Titration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the arrangement of that song is I wanted the soloist I think David Boykin is playing a sax solo. I wanted it to really build, and at the peak of his solo, I wanted the horns to come up underneath, and then that would sort of, push everyone into the next soloist or the next event to happen. And I went over this many times with the band. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we got it." So we're in the studio. We do the first take. David's taking a solo for like a half hour. I'm like, "No, man, this would be like 3 or 4 minutes, and then we go in." So I stopped it. Let's try it again. Did it again. Same thing. It's super long solo. Like, no. David, this is short solo, and then guys, you got to come in underneath. Tried it a third time. Same thing. No one's coming in. So I got so mad. I just threw the drumsticks down. I was like, okay, that's it. We're done. And I just left.
Oh, shit, man.
Just left the session. I walked around the block just to calm myself down, came back, gave everybody their drink. I got so upset. I was like, man, this record is ruined, blah, blah, blah. So then, I listened back to the master. I'm like, wow, this is the best song on the record. I like this song. And that was really a learning experience because, you can't, sometimes the music takes a different shape than what you have in your head, and you got to just go with it sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and what you think is a bad take could be a good take. What you think is a good take could be a bad take.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Did you then go to Europe as a leader quite early after that, or not yet?
I've never been to. I've never done my own project as a leader. No.
Really? Oh man.
No. Never happened. Hopefully soon.
Oh, hopefully soon. Then, yeah. I mean, it's funny, interesting. Okay, I thought you did then. Okay. I mean, you have to tour this daily biological project. That's such a cool one, man. I would love to, man.
We just recorded a new record.
Oh, really?
That's going to be coming out in September, either September, October.
The same band?
On same band on Astral Spirits.
How did you hook up with these guys? Because I didn't know them. Brian and Neil, I think they are, right?
Brian and Neil, I met at the New School, around 1992, 1993, something like that.
Oh, okay.
And me and Brian became really good friends. All my family was in Chicago, so when we had short breaks and stuff, I would go with Brian. Excuse me.
Okay.
I'd go with Brian to his house. He's from DC. And Neil, I remember just walking through the practice rooms, and all the piano players are playing the same stuff. They all sound the same. Sound
Mhm.
great. But I heard this guy just doing some different stuff. I was like, well, who in the world is this? Knock on the door. It was Neil. I was like, man, what are you working on? And he was doing some like Andrew Hill tunes and some,
Oh man.
you know, getting into some Elmo Hope stuff. I was like, wow, man, this guy, let's play, you know. This guy
That's
sounds
fantastic.
great.
Well, interesting. Did you through years like
And actually, the way that band started, quickly, the way that band started, we applied for. We never played together as a trio, but there was a grant or some type of internship grant, something, and I was like, all right, well, let's just see. I'll put our names in and see what happened. We didn't get the grant. And so I was like, okay, I guess we're not going to play. I was like, no, wait, we're going to play, man. We can't not play just because we didn't get a grant. That's ridiculous.
Sure.
You know? And that turned into the Daily Biological.
Do you feel more, I wanted to ask you, do you feel more comfortable now being a leader through, you know, after 20 years after Active Ingredients and like?
Well, after Active Ingredients, there is the band I did with Chris Lightcap and Angelica Sanchez.
I love that one. Yeah, sure.
That was a great band, and I was sort of the leader by default. Like we knew somebody needed to be up front in order to, you know, promote it or whatever. And so I volunteered. But to answer your question, I'm not that comfortable being a leader. It's hard.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Sure.
It's very hard for me, and I'm trying to get better at it. You know, because I do enjoy it.
Yeah, it's fun when you come to Europe. My first European tour, it was like, man, that was like a learning curve and experience. What can go wrong? You know, like not checking the hotels before and stuff like that. And it's like, man, okay. I'm sorry, guys. I fucking
a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
because if anything goes wrong, everyone's looking at you.
Yeah,
and anything goes right, you know, then it's about the band, not about you. You know, so
and, you know, you're like schedule 11 there. Well, when do we eat? Yeah, wait a second. You know, it's 6. Yeah, okay, blah. Sound check there. Man, that's. But then I got used to it. I was like, well, okay, that's fun. You know, I love it. But
yeah, it gets easier, I bet.
The more you do it. Yeah, more relaxed you are. Yeah. And even things that in the beginning, I guess, would throw you off. It's like, no, yeah, it's cool. Just we'll figure it out, you know. But about Daily Biological, you wrote some great music there. And what's your progress in writing music? How do you start? I mean, it's a lot of rhythmical stuff always, I think, when I, you know, or polyrhythms or happening melodically also, but
some stuff, yeah. I think it's really working with Joe Chambers, you know, who was my teacher. He always stressed how it's important to be a writer too, you know, composer.
Yeah. He was such a composer, man. I mean, still is.
Yeah. And so I took that to heart, and I got to a point where no matter whose session it is, whoever is doing the session, I would just say, hey, man, I got a tune. You want to check it out?
Oh,
and the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say, no, you know, we're just recording. But a lot of times people are like, oh, yeah, let me check it out. And I would get a tune on the record.
Okay.
So that started off pretty early. Like all those records I did with Jeff Parker, usually have a couple of my tunes on there. And and I worked in a couple bands that were collective groups where I did a lot of writing. And eventually, I just got to a point where I got more and more comfortable with writing. But I still haven't made a record, including this new record coming out. I haven't done a record where it's just my compositions. Okay. You know, it's always my compositions with other compositions or with standard or something, you know.
Yeah.
That might be the next thing. We'll see.
Is it hard for you to write? I mean, does it go fast with you, or like do you struggle sometimes? Or
no, I mean, for me, the composition is never finished. You know, it's never done. So I have some songs that I've been writing, you know, for 30 years that I'll change this here, change that there, and be like, okay, now I'll come up with a different title. It's the same song, you know.
Sure, yeah.
But it's a process, yeah. You know, some things come very easily, some things not. You know, it just depends.
Do you have a problem like that you get a feeling that you're repeating yourself as a writer or not? I mean,
sometimes
I'm just speaking just from my standpoint. Don't get me wrong, though. You know, sometimes when I write,
I do.
I'm like, man, I thought I wrote this 7/4 or whatever already 2 years ago. It's the same shit or something, but I guess it's not. But I don't know.
Right. No, I mean, I've often second guessed myself, and I'm like, man, I've been writing the same 3 tunes for 30 years, just you know, like change something. But for me, what it really boils down to is it's the feel and the emotion, right? Because you can have the same written material, but if it feels different, if it's emotionally different, it's another song, right? I mean, that's how I gauge whether or not something is the same. It's like, okay, does this give me the exact same feeling? No. Well, then that's different.
Yeah, and also if you change musicians, of course, it's
of course,
it completely changes. Yeah. Otherwise, we started today like with Iron and Wine. I mentioned. I really want to ask you how that happened, because this is something that I would not associate you with, you know, where you stand as a drummer, let's say now, or what people know you. But like, how did that one begin?
That was really through Matt Lux, I think, again.
Oh, okay.
Because he knew Sam. He might have recommended me. I know Sam was familiar with Chicago Underground stuff.
Oh, really? Oh,
and
wow.
probably also familiar with the stuff I did with Sam Prekop. That working with Sam Prekop really, that was my introduction into, you know, the indie rock world, or whatever you want to call that. And so I made connections in that world through that. And it also just made my work sort of familiar to other people.
Sure.
So Sam called me, and that was unbelievable. It was amazing. You know, that was almost 2 years of touring.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay, you were part of the touring band, actually.
Yeah, because I did the record at the very end, but we toured a lot, you know, and that was a whole new world. I mean, I did some indie rock touring before, but this was at a much higher level, you know, and playing, you know, the Tonight Show and the different television shows, you know, playing all the big rock festivals and all that stuff. It was a whole nother world.
That's amazing. Yeah, I like that. So how you play, you know, that monkey tune or whatever it is. I love, you know, the groove there, and it's funny, like now that I know you're on that album, when I listened today, I was like, man, you know, I really listened to the drums and what's happening before. I really wanted to see, you know, if what's going on, and I was like, man, yeah, sure, that's you. You know, you're like sometimes doing little shit in between, and it's like I love that. You know, it's like it's a nice record. So beautiful.
That was a fun band for sure.
Yeah. Otherwise, to chat, not to take more of your time, I just wanted to ask you, like, for this year, what's your plans? Are you coming again to Europe, or for?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm always in Europe, man. I'm going back to Europe. I'm going to Europe next month.
Oh, wow.
I'm doing like a 2-week tour with James Brandon Lewis with the quartet.
Oh man, okay.
And then we're going to record right after that tour in Switzerland.
Oh yeah, for Intact.
Coming back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming back for about a week. Then I'm going back to Europe with Rob Mazurek to Portugal. And I'm bringing the whole family with me. I got 3 girls, bringing my wife, 3 girls. We're going to hang out on the beach for a couple weeks.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
And then, yeah.
Yeah, I hope to catch you.
Yeah. Where are you based out of?
I'm in Slovenia.
Oh, you're in Slovenia. Oh man, I love Slovenia.
Yeah,
man.
you played Cerkno already a couple of times in Ljubljana. I don't know, were you ever in Maribor? That's my hometown.
Yeah. Oh, I love Maribor.
Yeah,
I love Maribor. That's a great place because there's a little tiny jazz club there. I know you go downstairs.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's it called?
Narodni David Brown. He organizes that.
Yeah. And Simona's from Maribor, you know,
exactly.
Simona, right?
Sure.
Yeah. I love Maribor's great, man.
Yeah. So
Reggie Workman's wife is from Maribor.
I know. I didn't even know Reggie was living in Maribor for a year. And no one knew. Then one guy told me, like, yeah, did you know that Reggie lived last year in Maribor? I was like, are you kidding me, man? I would be there every day just to ask him questions. I didn't know that. But yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. But cool, man. Thanks, for taking the time today, and hope to catch you live one day soon. So I hope even we get to play one day or something. So it would be fun.
I would love that, man. I checked out a clip of you, man, with Titration.
Oh yeah. Oh.
From like 2005, something like that.
Oh man, that was even earlier.
Sounded amazing. Sounded great.
Thanks. Yeah, that was amazing. I wrote really heavy music at Titration. We had like a 10-day, 2-week tour, and it was like all written out stuff, odd meters, changing. And after the first gig, he didn't use sheet music anymore. And I was man,
he has that total recall.
Yeah, Ty, are you serious? Yeah, don't worry. Like he just nailed it. I was like, man. That's the next level again.
Man. Yeah, that's amazing.
It was incredible. But cool, Chad. Let me know if you're around like near Slovenia. Let's get together for a beer or dinner or playing or whatever. So would be cool to hang.
I'd love that, man.
So if you're around here,
Samo, thank you, man.
Cool, Chad. Thank you.